agriculture is a means to help heal the world. So I will pass it over to you, and I would say, please speak as long as you want. We understand we're going a little bit over, and for those that need to leave, that's absolutely fine, and to not take it, you know, it's just our sorries for going a little bit over, Louise. But handing it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you can all hear me, first of all. You hear me well, good. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be part of your GA. I'm contacting you from Germany, and as you see, it's evening already here. It's great to have heard your GA, and congratulations to the new board members. I wanted to share something about organics in the world and how actually transformation to more sustainable agriculture is happening right now, how we are all part of this. I also hope to learn something more from you in your reactions maybe. And because as you can see, it's being approached differently in different parts of the world, but eventually I think we're all moving towards the same direction. So let me share my screen. Yeah, here I am. You should be able to see my screen in a second, I hope. You see my screen?
We can see your screen. It says welcome, Louise, so we don't actually see your PowerPoint though.
Oh, that's a challenge. Let me get out of that because I do see my PowerPoint, of course.
If you choose the desktop option, that should work.
I'm going to do this differently. I'm sorry. How's this?
Perfect. Looks great.
Okay. So I said I wanted to talk about transforming agriculture towards true sustainability. And there are several policies and practices around the world from which I wanted to share some, which are stories from other IFOM members, just as you guys are members of IFOM as well. So first of all, I think there's very good news that the organic sector is growing. And the not so good news of it is that we need way more of it because there's so much at stake at this moment in the world. And we're going to look at that. And what I'm showing here, I guess that you are familiar with them and you might know them. These are the data that comes from the book that FIBEL, the research institution on organic agriculture in Switzerland, is working on. And we collaborate with them to bring out these statistics every year. And we then publish them in February during the Biofach in Nuremberg in Germany. And so the data that you see here are actually the figures of the end of 2018, which we have then published and presented in February just this year. And so we can see that there's quite a growth of organic agriculture, both in terms of hectares and also in terms of the market value. And it's great that there are already 16 countries in the world with more than 10% of organic land, because that's sort of where we want to see our examples and where we want to grow from. There are many producers around the world, and I will come back to that later, and also many countries with one way or the other organic activities. And then there are also acreages that are counted as organic agriculture, but are not agriculture. For instance, when we talk about wild collection. So there's a steady increase all in all. And you might also be aware of where the markets are. And I think it's important to keep this in mind when we later on look at where the producers are. So the main market, of course, is in the US, and then there are markets in Europe. So if we look at it by country, you can see at the left side, but we can also look at it by region in the world, and you see North America and Europe are the biggest markets of organic agriculture. And I said already, it's a steady growth in organic agriculture. That is excellent. On the other hand, the total acreage of organic agriculture in the world is 1.5%. And sometimes that makes me a little bit sad because, as I said already, we need way more of it. And we also need an acceleration to come there so that more people, more landscapes, more living beings can actually profit from what organic agriculture can do. But then again, we have these great examples of countries where organic agriculture is almost a quarter of all of agriculture in the world. Let's take Austria, a country here in Europe where 25% of agriculture is organic. And really, once we've made that step, it's not so difficult to make the next steps. Then we see a couple of island states that also have a big portion organic, and some other countries as well in Europe, but also in South America, like Uruguay. Now I wanted to move to where the organic producers live. And that's interestingly not in the countries where the biggest markets are, and also not in the countries where the majority is of agriculture, or a big bunch of agriculture is organic. And this is so important because these producers produce for markets that are somewhere else. And so the rules according to which they have to produce are also somewhere else. And I don't mean to say that if the rules were not so strict as in the US, they would not have produced organic. That's not the point that I'm making. It's the conditions under which they can get access to markets, both in North America and in Europe, which is so important, under the assumption that they already produce organic. And really, the majority of them does. And so in that case, we are talking about group certification, grower groups, which is a sort of certification in which actually an external certifier looks at what the quality management system is of a group of producers. And we can think of these producers as thousands, sometimes 10,000, sometimes 100,000 of them producing one commodity for our markets. And this whole concept of internal control systems for these grower groups has actually been an invention of IFARM Organics International back in 2003. And this idea has been taken over also by other voluntary standard systems like Rainforest Alliance, for instance, and also Fairtrade International works with this. And currently, there's a revision on how grower groups need to get certified within the USDA and also in EU regulation. So that's why it's so important that there is harmonization between the two. Imagine being a farmer in such a country and you have to abide to two different rules. That's already quite a hassle. Of course, it's important that when we talk about grower groups, that we talk about credibility, and we want to make sure that what the total range of organic products that we can offer consumers wherever in the world, that they are also credible and that they really are organic. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that the market access for these farmers who actually live in difficult circumstances is always guaranteed. So that's why we are working on enhancing credibility and also make sure that actually the external inspection can get improved. And we also want to make sure that in case there is use of pesticides or other maybe fraudulent behavior, that not a total group of 100,000 farmers get punished for that, but maybe only the cluster in which this farmer is residing. And then of course there's an effort to encourage best practice for forerunners. So IFARM Organics International is working with the players in the field to actually then define what those best practices are, so that we are also working on pulling all the grower groups, let's say, to more credibility, and at the same time also take care that there is harmonization in this field. And of course, this also has to do with what you in Canada can offer in your range of organic product to consumers, excuse me. Because we do know that consumers are more likely to buy more organic if they can get all their groceries in the same quality. And so that's why it's also important that we work on this. And then, of course, I think in terms of solidarity and as farmers among each other, it is important to make sure that also these farmers get a market access. So that's one point I wanted to ask your attention for, and just to share that we are working on that. At the same time, I want to say that quite often I think that we are focusing on the organic regulation only or too much. And there are way more, let's say, circumstances that actually make organic agriculture possible in the first way. And that's why I wanted to share this graph with you. It's derived from an article that we did last year in Nature Sustainability, in which we wanted to present what are actually the levers driving sustainability in agriculture. So this is not talking about what are the rules in organic regulations, but this is about what are the what is the environment, the political environment in which organic agriculture can thrive in the first place. And we identified 4 levers. Well, one of it is, of course, that organic agriculture and other agroecological systems, I will come to this terminology later, will have an opportunity to move up, to become bigger, but also to increase in sustainability, which actually is the x-axis of this diagram. And in the at the same time, there is a policy lever possible if we make sure that there is more consumer awareness. And consumer awareness, on the one hand, is a sort of educational task, and you earlier talked about that. But at the same time, and that's the nice thing that we saw, for instance, with I Grow Your Food, consumer awareness is also, again, a policy pressure tool. So there are 2 sides on this. And then the third policy lever actually looks at incentivizing improvements in all systems of agriculture. So many times we are looking at how can we make a good environment for organic agriculture to happen. But we've also found in several countries that it's helpful to actually team up with others to make sure that all of agriculture is more sustainable, and therefore it is more attractive for farmers to move to organic agriculture. And sometimes it can even be politically useful to not per se mention organic. And then the fourth lever, in policies is about just raising legal requirements and industry norms, and just raising, if you like, the bottom line. And here, for instance, in Europe, we're looking at, and we're very thankful that finally that will happen, to outphase, for instance, glyphosate. This will also help moving agriculture to more sustainability as a whole, and also help farmers looking for other methods to deal with their pests. So I just wanted to give you this overview on 4 levers that there are for policy driving sustainability. And now it's, of course, depending on your entrances and your situation, which you really know best in Canada, and that's why you're also united in COTA, on what works best for you. However, some examples from what we know from the world is, for instance, that there are public good rewards. We know of drink water suppliers that support all the farmers in the water catchment area to transition to organic agriculture, and the farmers get rewarded for that. Another example is, and this has worked very well, for instance, in the country of Denmark, a national organic action plan in which not only the Ministry of Agriculture is involved, but also other ministries like the Ministry of Nature, Conservation and Environment, the Ministry of Health, and even the Ministry of Labor, to make sure that all these actions and energies come together to then promote organic agriculture. We also know that an increase in research and extension, again, helps also providing the proof for organic agriculture, which is so often what politicians are asking for. I already talked about raising the bottom line, which is something we are now looking at in Europe. We're very happy that glyphosate got outphased, but that's also important in some other places of the world. But I don't want to look only at national level policies. And that's why I would like to mention ALGOA, which is actually the Asian local governments for organic agriculture. And we found that in Southeast Asia, local governments are actually way more steady in their policies and what they can do than national governments. And so in this group of municipalities, and we talk about more than 250 mayors come together who have declared their municipality to be organic. And these are rural municipalities for a big part, where the farmers have turned to organic, their markets, of course, the school meals, the hospital meals, canteens, everything that you can imagine. This also can have a huge impact and also be an example for the rest of agriculture in that country. So if you're looking for inspiration, I really would recommend to go to look into Algoa and what this has meant for those areas. Another way of, let's say, local endorsement of organic agriculture, if you like, is the Los Angeles Good Food Purchasing Program that you may know. And that actually is a program in which you can score points on sustainability. And you, in this case, is the canteen of a school, for instance, or of a public institution. And what I like about this program is that it's not necessarily defining organic as the best. However, by choosing organic, you can score a lot of points. And this has helped many producers in the vicinity of Los Angeles to get contracts in public procurement for delivering to canteens. So these are also things that can happen, and also where you see that local governments also have quite some power. Another example, and that relates to the organic agriculture plan of Denmark, is, for instance, that the canteens, the public canteens in Copenhagen, their capital, all of them serve organic food. And it's just a competition among them who serves the biggest majority of organic food. So there are really things happening around the world and really ideas on how we all can promote organic agriculture. And this is beyond then our regulations. And of course, the regulations define then what we call organic, but it's also very important in which let's say, environment those organic practices can take place. I wanted to take you to the EU. Tia suggested that this might be of interest for you. And this is another attempt, if you like, to create a conducive environment for organic agriculture. And it's really, the sign of the times, if you like, and this part of the pond. We have a new EU Commission since last year. And one of the first things that the president did was presenting an EU Green Deal. This was, of course, all before Corona, but I think everything that's in this Green Deal is even more valid right now. And there are two strategies, the one on biodiversity and the one on farm to fork, that both mention that there should be 25% organic in 2030. So this is great news. These are overarching strategies. What is now following is the CAP, the Common Agriculture Policy. And our colleagues from IFAM Organics Europe are working very hard that this Common Agriculture Policy also obliges national targets to be set. And then there will be a new European Organic Action Plan created soon. And when I come back to regulation, you may also like to be informed that the new organic regulation in the EU actually has been postponed to go into force to the 1st of January 2022. So there are lots of things happening there. And the statement that I'm making there, that public pressure pays off, we really believe that here in Europe. So there are many people going on the street for climate actions. You even may know that, for instance, in Germany, but also in other countries, once a year, consumers and farmers together go on the street to actually say we're fed up with the current system. That's literally the title of the demonstration, We're Fed Up, where everybody comes together and asks for another kind of agriculture. So yeah, public pressure pays off, but also being organized. And that's what our colleagues in Brussels, I think, do very, very well, and which I hope that's also going to happen in North America with IFAM North America. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about what actually you've been talking about earlier, regenerative agriculture or any other terms that there are. Well, what's in a term? Some terms are defined by law, for instance, organic agriculture. Others more have a history, like biological agriculture. As here in Europe, we speak many languages, and organic in some languages is simply biological. Then there is a big movement in India on natural farming. For instance, the zero budget natural farming. And then there is organic, organic regenerative, and an overarching term, agroecology. And I think with all those terms, we have to look at the, let's say, what's the appropriateness of them in the conditions, in the local conditions that we talk about in the world, versus the danger of being co-opted. And yeah, you earlier said, and I am really interested to look at the position paper of COTA on regenerative agriculture. If this is a term that's just being used as greenwashing, it won't help us. But on the other hand, if there are terms like natural farming, which is happening in India, which simply means no chemicals, then really this might also help our cause. And I wanted to show you that this is the current discourse at the UN level. So the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the UN, they have a process on what they call scaling up agroecology. And through a sort of bottom-up process, 10 elements of agroecology have been defined. And I won't go through them in detail, but if you look at them and if you compare them with the principles of organic agriculture, there's not so much of a difference. So really at the UN level, IFAM Organics International has chosen to also use this term, agroecology. And at the same time, we see that the FAO is using examples, for instance, of our blog or through our projects that they want to present as good practice of agroecology. And in their process of scaling up agroecology, the FAO again gives advice to governments in several parts of the world on how to make conducive policies for scaling up agroecology. So here we are part of the game. It has taken us a little bit to accept also that terminology, but also to be open for it. But in this case, we really think it helps the overall cause of pushing agriculture to more sustainability. And at the same time, we see that those countries, again, for instance, in India, where the farmers are looking for concrete markets, one way or the other, they also end up with organic regulations or with the grower groups about which I talked earlier. You may also know that IFAM has been a proponent of local certification systems that are not third party, but second party, if you like, and we call them participatory guarantee systems. And they fit very well also with this scaling up process of FAO and promoting sustainable non-chemical practices, I will call them like this, at a local level. So if we talk about agroecology at IFARM, I already said it took us a little while, but once if you look at our definition of organic agriculture, which we commonly decided as a movement and voted upon in 2008, then there's not so much different than with those 10 elements of agroecology. And at the same time, we also have a position paper on what we call organic. And basically, we then conclude that organic, in the way it is regulated, is a well-defined subset of agroecology. What we have then installed is a food policy forum for change. And I actually know that OTA in the US is doing a sort of the same thing at US level, which IFARM has done or is now creating with some partners for policymakers we're focusing first of Sub-Saharan Africa and in Asia, to bring actually the policymakers who are of goodwill together and have coaching sessions for them, have peer-to-peer exchange sessions for them, so that they can install the right policies for organic agriculture in their areas. possibly this is also a suggestion for you, or I imagine an exchange of Canadian politician makers with a European, for instance. I could imagine that it also could be worthwhile. Basically, what we are doing here is creating a safe space for them to talk with each other, and at the same time also learn, of course, from the practices and promote them again. One of the last things I wanted to share with you, but actually I don't need to share, I guess I want to thank you for, is your contribution that you gave to I Grow Your Food in 2020. This has been a worldwide campaign, and we were very pleased also with the submissions from Canada. And you might have seen those wonderful little videos, and I think you used them even in your organic week as well. We've got a lot of positive response on that, and we're certainly going to repeat that again for next year. So please connect to your farmers, make sure that they contribute. One of the nice quotes I thought there was is from an Irish farmer. She said that she now realized that her tribe is all over the planet. I think that's a very nice feedback that we had, and apart from all the social media accounts that we had here. Again, this is about engaging consumers, but also creating public pressure on, let's say, the benefits of organic agriculture. So thank you again for participating, and we really hope that you will do so next year as well. As Tia already said, your Organic Week will not be coinciding with the Organic World Congress. We've postponed it to September next year. At this point, it's really difficult to say how the possibilities for travel and participation look like. We're working on this in a new setting that in any case will be hybrid, if you like, so people can participate at the event itself, but also through distance. And depending on the circumstances, we have also to look in a full virtual option. But really, we hope to be receiving also participants in France, because we also think that there is really value for face-to-face exchange. And there will be more on policy and policy exchange, and also about relation of organic agriculture to climate change, on which you talked earlier, for instance. So we're really happy to count COTA as one of our long-standing members in Canada, and I just wanted to motivate you to see whether you can bring more members in, so that we can do all the good work that we need to do at a global level. And I think we can only do that when we work really together. So this is what I wanted to share, but I'm also very interested to hear your comments, and I'm quite sure that there are ideas on regenerative, agroecology, natural, whatever we have there. So far.
Great, that was wonderful, Louise. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. And I think what we'll do is we will open it up to see if there's any questions or comments from the crowd. Just to highlight that in the chat window, I did circulate the presentation as requested by Marla. So you all have a copy of that. But why don't we, I would say just unmute yourself and go for it. We're a small enough crew that I don't think we're probably going to be talking over each other. Are there any questions or comments for Louise?
Hi, Louise. Thank you so much for such an inspiring presentation. I wondered if in your journey to embracing the idea of organic as a subset of agroecology, I really love how you described that, and I actually feel really heartened by this outcome. I wondered if, like, what you would say maybe some of the top lessons learned in that, in getting there, because I often find there's a tension around the table sometimes in those conversations about like protecting our corner of the work versus the risk of, if we welcome more people into the tent, do we end up watering down the benefits of what we do? I wondered what you would say to that.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. I think that's a very valid point. And I believe that we are currently at a point in time that maybe our biggest strength is that we have to hold out this tension. And I sincerely believe it's not worth spending our time on quarrels too much, whereas the earth is really crying for us to do a lot of healing. So having said that, I also think we should be very clear about our bottom lines. And I think that we can be open because we have our principles quite well articulated and defined. So that's where we go to, and we also say, very simple: no to GMOs, no to pesticides. Here are our principles, and based on that, we're really open to talk to you. And then we also must realize that organic is not regulated in all parts of the world, or in some parts of the world, organic is only regulated for export, for instance, but not for local markets. And we want to make sure that also these farmers have an opportunity to both contribute, but also to participate in a better world. And that's how we came to this, let's say, conclusion. And then at the same time, I think there's a function for instance, IFAM Organics Europe, and also IFAM North America or COTA, to make sure that your regulation is not what you call watered down, and that there is clarity on that. But I think, let's say, I come from a farm myself, a conventional farm, and if I look at conventional farmers, what I see is they're all future organic farmers. We must be able to reach out to them. So that's my take on this. I hope it responds a little bit to your question.
Do you have other questions? Dag, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Louise, I was wondering, kind of following up a little bit on the same line of question, but the term regenerative, when it first started to be used, we were worried about who would use it in a different way than we do in organic. And I was wondering, is agroecology at the same risk? Will it be taken over and misused as well? And should we worry about that? Should we take any steps right now? Because I've personally been hesitant to use the term, because I think if once we use it, I worry about it just being co-opted.
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting history that we have actually with this term agroecology, and it's not only a history of love, I should say, and even the more the terminology is being used in Latin America, originally has opposed itself to organic agriculture in the sense like we are the better ones. And that also has to do with the shape that organic agriculture can have in Latin America, is that it might be focused on exports only. And so groups of, let's say, sustainable farmers in Latin America wanted to distinguish themselves and called their production agroecological. And much of what we currently promote as participatory guarantee systems, this is not something that IFAM has invented. It's only something that we, let's say, promote a lot, but really it comes from those agroecological farmers in Latin America. There is because it is not regulated, yes, this challenge of co-opting is there, but I do think that the terminology is old enough and also rooted enough currently in the FAO system that this chance might not be so high. Different than from regenerative agriculture, and there I would share your concerns. And at the same time, I'm also happy to see this organic regenerative. And this looks much to what we know in several countries in Europe, where the EU regulation is a basis for associations to put their own regulations on top of. And here it's not called regenerative, but it could be called Bioland, for instance, or the craft standards in Sweden, or actually another level on top of the EU regulation. And in that sense, is regenerative agriculture really a good move, I think. There's always a chance of being co-opted. And so eventually, while there is some discussion in our sector whether regulations are good or not, we can also see them as a sort of safe haven to which we always can go back to. So yeah, okay, that's sort of my response to you, Dak.
Hey, Louise, it's Travis here. I don't know how well you guys can hear me. I'm on the road. Yeah, just kind of continuing kind of in line with this, actually. I mean, just this morning, I'm on a mailing list for a market called Cultivator out of Alberta. And it was interesting. I scrolled to the bottom of it, and, you know, it's a lot of essentially farm direct meat and options for meat and stuff. And it was interesting because they're talking about antibiotic free, grass fed, but then I also noticed another little circle that was herbicide and pesticide free. And the reason this is interesting is because, you know, we when the COVID thing started, we introduced to a grocery store chain actually some of our transitional wheat milled into flour, and wrote herbicide and pesticide free essentially as something that differed it from the conventional flours. And a couple of years ago, we did the same thing with some yellow peas, you know, a large lot of yellow peas that we sold while we were transitioning. And again, it was chemical free, transitional, you know, grain. And what's interesting is pretty well all peas that have traded since then is being noted as glyphosate free. So I think, like, you know, we're a farmer. We're also, you know, working on our own farm direct food brand. So we're getting closer and getting to know the customer more. And definitely we've been pushing the envelope on transitional type products and how to capture an additional premium as we're moving into organic. But what we're seeing is we're also then within the marketplace, you know, because of, you know, larger quantities doing this and accomplishing this, seeing change. Now, you know, as the organic farmer, that is also a threat, because are those taking customers away from an organic marketplace? So there's the negative in that, but then there's also the holistic side, that we are drawing attention to what's wrong with the food if it isn't labeled as anything, you know. And I think, like, you know, some of those being sort of the biggest and darkest secrets in, you know, production agriculture that exists today, you know, it's a good opportunity to kind of love farmers around us, meet them where they're at, but then also introduce to consumers the differences between organic, non-organic, and then this is the space in between. And by defining it, we're actually defining why organic is as good as it is, because it's a certified version of this. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of, you know, just sort of, it's neat to hear your optimism in the world, because we, being an organic farmer who was a conventional farmer in a very conventional place in the middle of Saskatchewan, there's a lot of friction between conventional and organic farmers. And we're trying to find ways to love our neighbor and be supportive, and, you know, it not be so divisive. You know, I think, you know, sort of like religion, let's represent what we're for rather than what we're against. And then that might create some unity and some love among us all, you know. And so just thank you for, you know, your encouragement.
Well, thank you, Travis. I think that's a wonderful contribution. I just want to give another perspective to this as well. Under COVID, the demand for organic products has risen enormously, and that's good news. currently the demand for organic in the world is higher than the supply. So there's so much space actually also for other organic farmers, and which is currently also, I'm sorry that I have to say that, currently also being taken up by some fraudulent practices. So I think that, you know, the more we can motivate also our other farmers to move to organic, for which there is space currently, the better it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, the crazy thing for us is demand increases. At the farm gate, our prices have fallen 35% in the last year or 2 years, which doesn't make any sense. You know, and we're hoping it's a small blip or a correction, you know, kind of thing. But you know, and that was, you know, where in ways we're questioning the transitional rates. You know, are they then being fraudulently manipulated or something on the other end? And you know, that's definitely something on COTA's side, the stuff around fraud prevention and etc. You know, I think all that is just very crucial as well. So it's neat to have partners and other entities throughout the world kind of working towards ensuring that credibility and stability, you know, in what the organic certification provides.
Do you have time for one more quick question? I know we're going a lot.
Let's go for one more, and then we should
thank-
probably let Louise enjoy her evening.
Thank you, Louise, for a brilliant presentation. It is very heartening to see all this work being done. I have a quick question. Are you at all concerned with all of the focus on soil health and biodiversity, carbon capture, and all these things that sound fantastic when they're done right? What kind of work is being done internationally, and are you concerned of the threat of synthetic biology being added to the mix? So, you know, when we're talking about good soil health and soil microbiome, and we know that all these patents are being released on soil microbes, how big of a threat is this right now, and what work is being done to address that? Like even at the UN level, when they talk about improving soil health, if it's not explicitly avoiding synthetic biology, could we actually be going down a road that's even worse than just conventional?
Well, thanks for your question. I think what we can do and where we lean on a lot is the studies and meta studies that we know here. And I guess you're familiar with the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture in Switzerland and their long-term trials that they do on soil. We also had in 2019 a meta study here in Germany on comparisons of organic studies and conventional studies. And so I think that's where we're leaning on. We're let's say concerned about using an argument of technology for helping improve things, where actually most of the time technology has screwed it up, excuse my French. So that is where, let's say, the level where we argue on, but I don't see those recommendations currently at FAO. However, there's a concerning, I would say, direction that FAO is taking with their new Director General, who has a Chinese background, and I guess that most of his motivation comes from needing to feed the world, which I think is it's not a conversation I would like to be part of, and also has some arrogance in it. But we can see that FAO for big deals also partnering up with the seed industry, and we know that to that belongs also the pesticide industry. So there are several faces, expressions of how FAO sits in the world, and that really is a concern, and we're following it. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. And just with our tech issue that we had when we first started, I wanted to take a moment to thank Omri for sponsoring our member day and your presentation, Louise. So thank you very much, Peggy, who's on the line as well. And thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day. I think next year, I've learned that online needs to be a half hour longer. So that's my debrief notes. But thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you all participate, and stay tuned for our next event, which is the Organic Summit next month. Thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
See
much.
you guys.